Welcome back everyone to another ESO build video. Today I'm going to be giving you the update to the Harvester build, the Stamina Necromancer for the Stonethorn DLC. Now this is designed to do a mixture of things. It's supposed to have good single target, decent AoE, in fact quite a lot of AoE at the same time, and also be able to survive and build ultimate very fast. Not only that, this doesn't require any vet content. You can of course go into vet content and get the more upgraded stuff, or just go for that stuff if you want to, but you do not need any vet stuff at all if you don't want to, and it will still perform just fine. So if you want to see more of this, stay tuned, everything is going to be explained.
How did you do that? How did you do that?
So, first of all, we are going to go over the stats. We are on 9.7k max magicka, 17.4k max health, and 32k max stamina, and also 1,756 stam recovery, which is pretty substantial. We have 55% crit at the moment, but that can go up, especially if you're inside a group with different classes with you, especially the Nightblade. We have 3.7k weapon damage, that can go up as well if you have a DK in your group, and we are sitting on 11k resistance across the board. You can fit a resistance buff if you want to, or if you've got a resistance buff in your group, obviously that will go up. Now, we are using 64 of our attribute points into stamina. You can go more into health if you want, but just bear in mind, if you do go into health, you are going to lack some of the stamina, so your damage potential will actually go down. We're using the Shadow Munda Stone, and we are using Arteum Takeaway Broth. Now, this will give us health, stamina, health recovery, and stam recovery, which is quite nice. But if you preference it, you can instead go for this stuff, which is very flat. It will give you more health and more stamina, so your damage output will be higher, your health will be higher, so your survivability will go to about 20k plus as far as health is concerned. But just bear in mind, of course, you will lose your recovery. So if you've got lots and lots of recovery coming in from your group, then that's of course fine. If you do not, then you might want to go with a more recovery based food. This is very expensive. This is very flat, same stamina as this, so you have the same damage output, but you have a lot more recovery. The downside to this, however, is you don't have any health in this. So if you do choose to use this food and you're comfortable going quite squishy, you are going to need to actually drop your stamina again and put 2 health glyphs on your larger pieces of armor. So perhaps put them on the chest and the legs or something like that. It's entirely up to you, but you need to close that gap. So just again, this will give you the highest flat output if you can sustain it. This is a very good all-rounder, and this if you want that extra recovery but don't mind going down a bit in stam, but you'll have to alter your health. So the choice is of course yours. Any of those is fine. Now we're going to go into the skills. These will be explained, of course, in detail, and of course where they come from. So this, first of all, is Blighted Blast Bones. This is from the Gravelord skill line. Second ability you unlock starts off as Blast Bones, morph it to Blighted Blast Bones. This is quite simple. You aim at a target and hit the button, and a skeleton will spawn and dive at it and blow up. And in area of effect direct damage, all enemies caught inside of this will be hit with a big disease blast. And it will apply Major Defile, reducing all the healing received and health recovery that target has by 30%. So it's very strong. Not to mention, of course, this does leave a corpse on the ground when it explodes. Now, this takes 2.5 seconds to charge up, so while it's running, it will actually be grayed out, so you can't spam it. But while it's grayed out, you need to fill the gap. So with that in mind, what you have to do is use fillers instead. You can't spam this. So while it's grayed out, you want to put in a light attack and a skill, a light attack and a skill, and then come back to it. Then again, light attack, skill, and come back to it. That is inside our rotation, so don't worry. It's not that confusing once you get into it, but just bear in mind, while this is grayed out, you cannot use it. That will, again, like I said, be explained later. Next up is Barb Trap. You want to make sure you keep this up all the time. This is in the Fighters Guild skill line. Last ability you unlock starts off as Trap Beast, morph it to Barb Trap. Now this is an 18-second damage over time with an initial pop as well, underneath the target's feet. Now once this is active, the dot will obviously go through its motions, and during that time you will be granted Minor Force, increasing all of the crit damage that you do by 10%. Now this does immobilize targets as well if they are caught in it, but that is only if they can be immobilized. If they can't be immobilized, they won't be, but the ability will still fire. So don't worry, you will still get this buff. Keep that up at all times. Next is Detonating Siphon. This is in the Gravelord skill line as well. If I can open it up. This is the last ability to unlock, so it takes some time. Starts off as Shocking Siphon, morph it to Detonating Siphon for the physical version of it. Now what this does is this does damage over time for 12 seconds, and anything caught in the beam or inside the small area of effect where this starts will take that damage over time. This has got unlimited targets. It can hit multiple, and it's very, very fast paced, really quick ticks as well, which is very beneficial to our overall build. That will make more sense when we get to the gear. Not only that, when it ends, whether you end it by reapplying it or it runs out, it will pop in area of effect and do burst damage. Of course, that is again disease. All the damage so far is disease apart from the beast trap. And while slotted, this will increase all of your damage done while on this bar by 3%. So this is a damage buffer just for sitting there. It's a very strong damage over time, but there is a condition. You must actually have a corpse on the ground to consume in order to activate this. Nobody on the ground, no activate. But Blast Bones lays a corpse down. So Blast Bones, light attack skill, Blast Bones again. As long as one of your light attack skills, as this blows up, so your second time around, is this, you can use it. Or if it's a previous rotation, maybe there's a dead one on the floor already. Must have a corpse. Very important. This is a little tricky to get used to, but with practice you will be fine. And again, this scales off of your highest offensive stats. So while it does disease damage, whichever one of the two pools you have, whether it be Magicka or Stamina, it will scale off of the highest one. So obviously we want to make sure it's Stamina, because that obviously does boost disease damage more than Magicka does, because it doesn't affect it at all. But just in case you have picked the other side of the Necromancer, if you like, this will still scale off of your highest stat. And it's free. Doesn't cost a thing. All you have to do is consume a corpse. So while this is very cheap, this is actually free. Next up is Venom Skull. This is also in the Gravelord skill line. First ability to unlock starts off as Flame Skull, morph it to Venom Skull for the poison version of it rather than the fire version. Now this will do poison damage in direct damage on the target, only one target, and every single time you cast your third version of this, so you apply one, then another, and then your third one, that third one will be 20% stronger. And while slotted, casting any Necromancer ability while you are in combat will count towards the third cast, if it's on your bar. Now, what we will do in the rotation is we will be firing this, and we'll be using this, and we'll be using this. This can proc itself, basically, as well. Once we get into the swing of it, we will have one already cast proc on the back bar, and you can't extra proc it here because we don't have it here, which will carry over. This will be the second one, and this will be the third. So, guaranteed extra strong version on the first rotation. Then the next part of the rotation, it will be this, and then we'll use this again, and it will be the strongest one again. As long as we're activating these abilities, it will tick, and then the big boom can come out. Once, like I said, again, you get into the swing of the rotation, every single time you cast this, it will be guaranteed the strongest version, just based on the way that the rotation is designed. But again, that may sound confusing to start with. Don't worry, this will be explained later on. You can even go to the timestamp if you want to go and skip to that and see what I'm talking about. But bear in mind, this is a spammable. If you really want to get less complex about it, it's a spammable poison direct damage ability. Deadly Cloak is next. This is in the dual wield skill line. This is here on purpose because of our setup. We need this skill. Yes, there are other options if you really want to, but this skill is what we are utilizing the most. This is the fourth ability you unlock. Starts off as Blade Cloak, morph it to Deadly Cloak. Now this will last for 10 seconds, and during its duration, it will do damage in area of effect, and this will happen once every second, so it will tick and tick and tick and tick, constantly doing damage in area of effect, within 5 meters of you. And it will also grant you with Major Evasion, reducing all damage that you take from area of effect skills. So if you are in trials or dungeons, or even in PvP if you really want to, any area of effect abilities at all will be reduced by 25% for you. So this is a defensive buff, and it's an offensive buff at the same time. It does damage, and you take less damage combined. Plus, this is going to be very beneficial for one of our sets, which makes us even stronger, both survival and damage. If you know what that is, no spoilers if you're watching the premiere, that is coming up also. Flawless Dawnbreakers, of course, on our front bar. This is in a Fighters Guild skill line. It takes a while to get to Fighters Guild 10 to actually unlock this, but once you do, take it as Dawnbreaker, morph it to Flawless Dawnbreaker. We don't really use this unless it's an oh shit moment and we don't have enough ultimate for our back bar ulti. Our back bar ulti is incredibly important, but this is mostly here for passives. We will get to those later, but if you're in an emergency situation and you need to finish off some undead, Daedra, or werewolf, or even just any other enemies if you feel like it, you can of course apply this, and you will get weapon damage for 20 seconds for doing so, plus the initial damage and damage over time that it actually gives to the targets you hit. It's very cheap. I wouldn't use it unless you really, really have to. Rest of the time, we use the back bar one, which is coming up in a moment. Necrotic Potency, of course, is insane. This is in the Bone Tyrant skill line. Third ability you unlock starts off as Bitter Harvest, morph it to Necrotic Potency. Now this will heal you once a second for 2 seconds and give you ultimate if you consume a corpse with it. And yes, this ability is free. And you receive less damage while it's on your bar. So ideally we'd like it on the front bar. It doesn't really fit into the rotation, doesn't really fit on the bar, so we're not utilizing it there, but we will take the extra mitigation while on the back bar, because that's normally when you get caught short. Also, this isn't restricted to one corpse. Any corpses within 12 meters of you, if you activate this skill, will be consumed by you, and every single one of them will give you 6 ultimate, and every single one of them will give you 2 seconds worth of a heal. So if you consume 6 corpses, that's the maximum, by the way, you'll have to cast it twice if there are more. 6 corpses, that's 6 ultimate straight away, and 12 seconds worth of healing over time. The heal, however, is scaled off of your max health. So obviously in a trial situation, perhaps you've got minor toughness, perhaps you've got ebon, perhaps you've used some health glyphs just to buff your health up a little bit. The higher your health is, the stronger that heal over time will be. But yes, it can crit, and yes, it can consider healing received as well. That is what you use whenever there's a body on the ground, if you're not already activating Detonating Siphon. It is essential that you utilize this as much as possible, because we want to be able to spam our ultimate as often as we can. Next up is Poison Injection. Yes, this is used on purpose because if you're inside mechanics, of course, you want to make sure that you've got some form of ranged ability rather than just spamming light attacks and keeping up volley, because, let's face it, no damage out in the field is useless. You're supposed to be doing something. So instead of just keeping this down, make sure you're light attacking it and spamming this occasionally as well. But overall, this is in our rotation once every rotation if we're in the face of the enemy. This will hit the target with initial damage, poison damage in fact, and it will last for 10 seconds, doing damage over time for those 10 seconds as well. However, the lower the health, the more damage this will do if the target is under 50% health. So the lower under 50 it goes, the more aggressive this gets. Keep it on the target at all times, but if you are at range, make sure you utilize it as a kind of spammable, just to add a bit of a filler during those mechanics. Now, this does take some time to unlock. It's in the bow skill line. It's the 5th ability you unlock. It starts off as Poison Arrow, morph it to Poison Injection. The other one doesn't have the execute power, it just interrupts. Consuming Trap is in the Soul Magic skill line. You get this at the very beginning of the game. It doesn't cost you anything, but the morph does. Starts off as Soul Trap, morph it to Consuming Trap. This will do magic or physical damage over time for 10 seconds, and it costs Magicka to cast. So that's helpful for our stamina sustain, because we don't need to use stamina to cast this. The highest stat you have will depend on which damage output it does. So for us, we are spec'd into physical with weapon damage and stamina, so this does physical. If you were spec'd the other way, it would do magic instead. Not only that, if any target with this on them dies, as long as it's still there, you will restore 20% of all 3 resources. So if you're very clever and you put this on multiple targets and they all die at once, you get loads of resources back, including that heal too. Very nice indeed. Now, with that being a heal, that's not just a resource filler, that can also crit and consider healing done and healing received. Really important stuff. Very useful skill. Keep it in your rotation, but in some situations where there's really, really fast adds, put it on multiple targets, you'll get loads back. Next is Skeletal Archer. This is a pet. A stamina pet. This is in the Graveboard skill line. 4th ability to unlock. Starts off as Skeletal Mage. Morph it to Skeletal Archer. Now this will summon a skeleton by your side for 16 seconds, which is quite a substantial amount of time. And it will attack the closest enemy every 2 seconds. Just bear in mind, of course, it follows the same rules as most pets. If you do want him to change targets, heavy attack it and it will follow you. Now, each time the archer deals damage, the next attack will do 5% more damage. So the longer this lasts, the better. Yes, we will overlap this very slightly, but don't overlap it too early, because if you do, obviously you're going to lose damage. Again, this will cause a corpse on death, which means Necrotic Potency can scoop it up again. In the situation that you want to reapply this, just in case you want to overlap it, if you have 7 seconds or less left on your previous pet, you will drop a corpse. If you have 8 seconds or more left, you will not. So just bear that in mind. That's a very useful tip if you're trying to utilize it for ulti gain. Also running around, not in combat, you can just cast this, run around for a bit. As soon as you see 7 seconds left, recast it, scoop it up. You can actually build ulti on the way to the next fight. Endless Hail is next. This is chosen on purpose. You could have used Arrow Barrage, but in testing, Arrow Barrage actually did less. This is in the bow skill line. 2nd ability you unlock starts off as Volley, morph it to Endless Hail. Now, while Arrow Barrage does do more damage, the duration is shorter, and our rotation overall is quite long. It's not massive, but it does tend to have too much of a downtime on the higher damage skill, and this one extended the duration and continued damage for a longer period of time. That being the case, with our glyph on our back bar firing more often as well because of the duration, overall this did outperform by about 4 or 5k. That is hit and miss depending on whether you crit or not. Sometimes you can close the gap, sometimes you can extend it, but it was a pretty substantial gap for most of the tests. So Endless Hail was better, but the choice is entirely up to you, of course. We are going to benefit from this with our weapon as well. Keep that on the ground all the time. It does damage every 1 second for every enemy caught inside of this. There is no cap to the AoE amount of enemies inside this. It's only debuff skills that do that. Debuff skills have a cap for the debuff, so 6 targets, but the damage over time can hit multiples. This one doesn't have any debuff, so we're good. Pestilent Colossus is our main ultimate. This is also in the Gravelord skill line, and this is essential. Starts off as Frozen Colossus, morph it to Pestilent Colossus. This will spawn Malcolm out of the ground, massive flesh abomination, and it will slam on the ground with both fists, punching everything in its sight. Now, the first smash will do X amount of damage, the next one will be stronger, then the one after will be stronger as well. So it's a growing strength skill, if you like. It's very short durated, though. It's only 3 seconds. But upon dealing damage to enemies, you will affect them with major vulnerability. The only way to get this skill in the game is to use this ultimate in either morph for a Necromancer. It's not available anywhere else yet. Now, this will last for 8 seconds, and anyone who hits any of the targets that Malcolm just punched will do 30% more damage to them all. It is very, very powerful, but they cannot be affected again for 20 seconds. Now, if you have 2 separate pulls, and you hit Malcolm on one pull, and then you've already got your ultimate for God knows what reason for the next one, that's fine. They're different targets, they're not on cooldown, it's not a problem. But if you, for any reason, manage to build this up very, very fast, and they're still on immunity, don't fire it until it wears off. Now, just so we're clear, this isn't a 28-second gap. It's not 8 seconds of major vulnerability and then 20 seconds of nothing. That 20-second cannot be affected phase starts as soon as major vulnerability is applied. So technically, between casting the first one and then casting the second one, once it runs out, you only have to wait 12 seconds to be able to fire it again. So yes, it's every 20 seconds, but it's 12 seconds from when the first application of it ends. So just bear that in mind. You can line these up with your group as well. Just make sure you're on timers and calling out your ultimates. It really, really helps. This is absolutely insane to buff your entire group. For solo, sure, this is nice for you, but this is a group buff. Everybody gets this, and I know there's loads of dummy humps out there about the Necromancer being stronger. They do have a very strong buff, but just remember, this is for everyone, not just for you. So if you want a balanced gauge for what people can do, and you're using this yourself, you might want to throw this on theirs as well to see what they can really get. Now, next up is passives. Now, this is very simple. This will reduce the cost of your pets. Now, as you can see here, this is 3.5k almost, or 3.1, and this is almost 2k. But if you have a pet active, and it dies, or you recast it, you'll be granted the buff called Reusable Parts. As you can see here, there it is. All you have to do is just have that passive and keep doing your rotation. So, whenever your Spirit Mender, Blast Bone, Skeletal Mage, whatever, dies, or you cast it, remember the 7-second timer, if you cast it over top of itself within that period left, you will benefit from this buff. It's insane. So, every time you fire a Blast Bones and then it blows up, your next one is cheaper. Fire it again, your next one is cheaper. It just keeps the costs down all the time. So while it might look on paper like these are expensive, they are indeed not. You will be using them a lot, but you'll always get that bonus. It's really, really handy. And even when it gets to Skeletal Archer, to start with, sure, it'll cost you the full price for the first cast when you first start a fight. But then your Blast Bones will also cost it, but once it explodes, the next one's cheaper, the next one's cheaper, the next one's cheaper, bang. This will be cheaper because Blast Bones just exploded, and now you're in that never-ending cycle of cheap pets. It's really, really handy. Next up, of course, is this very important Execute passive. If you have Gravelord abilities on your bar, for each one you'll gain 10% crit chance while the enemies are under 25% health. Now, you don't see that in your stats. That's versus the enemy. So we have extremely high crit when we get to low health. So at the moment we're sitting on 55%. Once we've got buffs from our group, we can actually get to about 61, sometimes about 64ish, depending on traits and weapons and stuff, depending on what you have. But this will push us way high, almost to sort of 80 to 90%, depending on which bar you're on at the time. Very, very helpful passive. Your execute is your kind of go time. That's when you can really, really shine. This will give you spell pen and physical pen if you have a Gravelord ability active, which 9 times out of 10 we will have. All you have to do is basically keep this siphon up or keep your pet up. As long as they're running, you will get higher penetration, so we don't need that much in our CPs. This increases your damage done with damage over time. Yes, we do have some damage over time active, and we will benefit from that a lot. We will take a couple of these. Whenever an enemy you are in combat with dies within 28 meters of you, you restore 200 magicka and stamina if one of these abilities is on your bar. Now, if you chose to, if you don't like the Venom Skull, if you can't get to grips with it, maybe you just don't understand it, you can, of course, use Ruinous Scythe, because that will heal you as well, and it's an area of effect spammable. That is a choice. If you do have it on your bar, you'll benefit from this passive. Failing that, the only time you'll actually get it is if you're on the back bar. Bear in mind, of course, you can swap this for Vigor if you choose. Now, this will reduce the damage you take from damage over time abilities if you have a Bone Tyrant ability active. So if you are currently receiving the heal from this, that will count. And this increases your healing received for each one on your bar slotted. We only have one on the back bar. We have nothing on the front unless you put the scythe there. So that's hit and miss. And this will increase your max health just because. Great. We'll take that. We are not using any of these abilities, so they're not necessarily going to benefit us per se, but we do want a couple of these passives. When you have a negative effect on you, your healing done is increased, so your heals will help you more. While you have a live and death ability slotted, skip that, we don't have one. When you use an ability on a corpse, you gain 10 ultimate once every 16 seconds. If you use this or this, once every 16 seconds, you will get 10 ultimate, even though the skill gave you ultimate in the first place, so that will help as well. And this, when you cast Blast Bones, or you have Blast Bones or Skeletal Mage or Spirit Mender active, you will get more recovery. So bear that in mind to make sure you've always got a pet active if you can. Dual wield, of course, you want every single one of these. This will increase your damage with your dual wield abilities against enemies under low health. So abilities in general do that. If we have Gravelord abilities on our bar, we have increased crit chance at 25% and under. This is a dual wield ability, as are our light and heavy attacks with this bar, so that's also going to get heightened. This reduces the cost of your dual wield abilities by 15%. We skipped one. That increases your offhand weapon damage by 6% because your offhand has less. This will give you a damage bonus versus basically incapacitated targets, so anything CC'd. And this will give you a bonus depending on what weapon types you are wearing or holding. We are actually using one dagger and one axe, but you can choose any combination you like. That did seem to outperform versus everything else for this particular build, but the choice is yours. For each one of these weapons, you will get one of these bonuses, and yes, if you combine two of the same one, you will get double the bonus. But of course, it's very important. If you're at long range, like I said before, you can use your poison injection as a spammable, although we're keeping up all the time anyway. If you're at long range, you get 12% increase to damage from your bow, light attacks, heavy attacks, and skill, including this. This will increase your weapon crit rating while on a bow bar. This will reduce the cost of the abilities. When dealing damage with a light or heavy attack, within 5 seconds of the last one on your bow, each one that you do will increase your bow damage by 5%. So your skills, your lights, and your heavies. This can stack up to 5 times. While you're out in the field inside mechanics trying to stay out of stupid, this might get to maximum. But during the rotation, it won't ever get much more than 3 or 4. So it's not the end of the world that you won't cap it out, but it will help during your rotation. And yes, it will carry over until it runs out. This is very important. If you dodge roll on your bow, you run faster. We're not using any light armor. We're not using any heavy armor. We're using nothing but medium. We are gone full squishy. You'll need every single one of these. This will increase your crit rating per piece worn. This will increase your stam recovery and reduction to cost for stamina ability. This will reduce the cost of sneak per piece worn and reduces your detection radius. That's not essential for PVE, but it depends on what you're doing. Maybe some situations you might need it. This is very important. It gives you a 15% weapon damage increase for having 5 pieces or more, which we do. And this will increase your movement speed if you sprint and reduce the cost of dodge roll. Remember, unlike Magicka DPSs, where they get to use the stand bar for block, dodge, and sprint and break free, and then the Magicka pull for their heals and their damage and their shields, so they've got 2 bars, we don't. We're using everything from our stand bar. Granted, we've got one kind of hybrid skill here, which costs Magicka, but apart from that, our stamina bar is for our heals, our sprint, break free, dodge roll, hitting stuff. Everything is used for the same bar. We've got to get these costs down, and you've got to be able to maintain it. We are not using heavy armor. We went over that already. Fighter's Guild. Make sure you get these. They're very important. Intimidating Present will get the cost of this down, so 15% reduction to cost. This will increase your weapon damage for each fighter's guild ability slotted. Remember I said this is for a passive. So, Dawnbreaker gives you a 3% bonus, and so does Beast Trap just for being on your bar. We've got nothing on the back. You could go Circle of Protection if you wanted that emergency heal while standing still, but I tend to not do that. It's entirely up to you, however. This one here, like I said earlier, you can swap that for Vigor if you can't find enough bodies to keep you alive, or if you just want to help your group with an Area of Effect heal. It's your choice. Banish the Wicked is essential. If you kill Undead Daedra or Werewolf, and you will, for each one you kill, you will get 9 ultimate back. And that, of course, does go alongside this. Once they're dead, you scoop them up. So 9 ultimate for the kill, 6 ultimate for scooping them up. That's 15 ultimate an enemy. Absolutely nuts. Oh, you will want this, by the way. Fighters Guild abilities do more to Undead Daedra or Werewolves. We are using a Beast Trap. They are going to get hit with it. You can use an Emergency Dawnbreaker. That will help. Undaunted, of course, is very important. This will give you 4% to your magic, health, and stamina back every time you take a synergy. Take every single one you can see. They will benefit you no matter what, and alongside their bonus for picking them up in the first place, you will get stuff back. There is your sustain. And of course, we are not using any other armor types apart from medium, so we get 1 bonus from this skill line here, or from this passive, which will give us a 2% increase to all 3 resources across the board. Now, we are an orc. Do you have to be? No. Have I chosen to be on purpose? Yes. This will increase your max stamina by 2k. This will give you health, which is quite nice, alongside of our 1.25 health in our Necro skill. Passives, and of course, if you do use a weapon ability, which we are already doing, we've got a protective and damagey one here. If you do damage with a weapon ability, you will heal once every 4 seconds for 600. That can crit, and that does consider healing done and healing received. So it's very, very handy indeed. Kind of a berserker-ish type passive. Very low, but it does help. And this will increase your weapon damage by 258 flat out, and reduces the cost of sprint, and increases your movement speed. So you have very, very fast cost reduction in there, Healy for doing damage, max health and stamina combined. Very nice across the board. You can, of course, choose any race you like. Just bear in mind the passives will be different, so you might have to jiggle some of your stats a little bit to make it work better for you. Alchemy, of course, is incredibly important. Most important passive in the game, in my opinion, is medicinal use. This will increase the duration of your potions by 30%. We are using crafted pots. We're using weapon pots, in fact, which give us major brutality, major savagery, and major endurance, increasing our crit rating, our weapon damage, and our stamina return or recovery for, with this bonus, 47 seconds. The cooldown is 45, and of course, we can now have our buffs up 100% of the time with that pot. Do not let your potions run out. They are consumable buffs. Keep them running. Now, we're going to go into the gear. So, I said you can do this without doing any vet content at all, and that is true. However, if you choose to do veteran content, you can have the slightly upgraded versions of the gear. So we're going to go over the veteran stuff. I'm going to show you what they are, but just bear in mind, normal can get all of this stuff. So first of all, we are using the Black Rose Axe and Dagger. Now, I know people are looking at this going, oh, I saw this on YouTube already. No, you didn't. I'm using a bow on the back bar. I'm not double dual wield, because if I'm double dual wield out in the field inside mechanics, I can't bloody reach. Goodbye, procs. Now, I'm using a known-honed axe and a sharpened dagger. You can use any combination of weapons that you prefer, but this was the highest out of the two so far. Now, the non-perfected version of this can be obtained on normal Black Rose Prison, and the only difference to this is you don't have the stam recovery bonus. So you lack 103 stam recovery while on this bar. Apart from that, the 2-piece bonus here, the last one, is exactly the same. So normal is just fine. In fact, as far as damage output is concerned, there is 0 difference if you can sustain it. If you're never having problems with your recovery, you never have to set foot in Vet Black Rose Prison. You can just get the normal one and you're done. But I like the recovery, and if you've got access to it, sure, why not? Now, why is this important? Remember I said we need to use this skill? This is on our front bar, gives us damage output and area of effect, and gives us protection. Well, it's buffed even furthermore with this. When dealing damage with that skill, you will actually get a buff every 2 seconds. And this will reduce the damage you take and increase the damage you do. So, it's more damage for you and less damage you take. This is a survival and damage output set at the same time, as well as the skill itself, and all you gotta do is activate it. It's very, very simple. So because we're using a 2-piece bonus here, we don't need a monster set. On the back bar, Perfected Maelstrom Bow, again, you don't have to go on vet to get this. It has one small crit bonus while you're on that bar, not while you're on the front, if you get the perfected version. If you don't get the perfected version, you just miss the crit bonus. The damage output from that 2-piece bonus at the end, the increased damage of volley per tick, that actually is exactly the same. So both of these weapons can be obtained in arenas that can be done on normal, and you will see barely any difference on either of them. This is only going to affect you while you're on the back, which is going to be small, and this actually won't affect you at all if you have good recovery anyway. This needs to be infused, by the way, with an increased weapon and spell damage glyph on the back, and this is a double dot poison. That, by the way, in case you are confused, will be on the website, but it is Alkahest, Nirnroot, Fleshfire Lava, and Nightshade. We are using a Zerblight. This is from a dungeon, and you can get this on normal. You do not, 100%, you do not need to do vet to get this. Get it on normal and just upgrade it. This will give you crit, it will give you stamina, and it will give you stam recovery. Now we've got the helmet, the shoulder, and 3 jewelry. Bloodthirsty on everything, so we can scale up damage throughout the fight and then take advantage of that big boost of extra crit at the end on our passives. What does this do? We do a lot of disease damage, so here's some more disease damage for us. While you are doing damage over time, remember we've got damage over time active all the time, especially with our siphon, which ticks rapidly fast, alongside volley and all that good stuff. Every single tick of damage you do in damage over time on every single target, so there's no cap on targets, will give you 1 stack. When it hits 20 stacks, it will explode. And that disease damage will explode around it, hitting all enemies around it. So if you have 2 enemies together and one explodes, the other one gets hit. If you have 2 enemies and they're both getting stacks and they both explode, one will explode and bounce off the other, and the other will explode and bounce off the other. So they both essentially got hit by this proc twice. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out if you multiply that, it gets more and more and more aggressive. So yes, if you have 10 enemies in area of effect and there's 10 enemies taking 20 stacks and they all blow up at once, every single one of those 10 enemies makes 15k disease go out in area of effect, and they all hit each other and it's a big explosion and everybody loves it. Absolutely amazing set. There is a cooldown on it. Every single time one of them explodes, each target has its own 2-second cooldown before the next one can start stacking up again. Also, if you have someone else in your group with this set, their stacks and your stacks combine for faster explosions. So you can absolutely annihilate area of effect situations or big ad pulls. It's very good single target as far as damage output is concerned, but if you bring an ad into the fight, you're getting double procs. You bring 2 ads in, you're getting triple procs over and over and over. You can see where this is going. Take advantage of situations, make sure your tanks are clustering stuff up, and this will go boom, left, right, and center. Now, this can go in any order. It doesn't have to be on jewelry and helmet and shoulders, but that's just where we've got it at the moment. The other set is actually a swap out. It's a choice. This also does not require veteran to get the basic version. If you have the basic version, you miss the 1k stamina on the 5-piece. That's it. Everything else is exactly the same. 2 crit bonuses, 5% increase to all damage, plus every time you do a light attack, you stack a wind on the target up to 10 times, and each one will get stronger and stronger and stronger. If it stacks up to 10 and stays consistent, it does a very, very heavy amount of damage, and that counts as damage over time, which can add ticks to a Zerblight and help it explode. So single target Relic Wind is really, really nice. And of course, you've got area of effect from your skills and a Zerblight. If you want the perfected version, yes, of course, you're going to have to go on to +1 or higher in Veteran Cloud Rest to get that, but you don't have to have this if you don't want to. Everything can be obtained on normal for the normal versions. So, just to clarify, this, you'll lose a recovery bonus, but if your sustain's covered, you don't lose any damage at all. This, you'll lose a crit bonus, and that's it. And this, you'll lose 1k stamina. So overall, you lose crit on the back bar, 1k stamina, and 100 recovery. That's all you're losing if you go on all normal. But if you don't want to do any trials whatsoever, and you have no interest in going into Cloud Rest at all, you do not have to. What you can do instead is put on Aegis Caller. This has a weapon damage bonus, a stam recovery bonus, a weapon damage bonus again, so very flat stuff. And when you deal critical melee damage, you will actually summon a spinning Aegis for 11 seconds, and after 2.5 seconds of him kind of spawning, he will spin and spin and spin and spin, doing damage over time in mass area of effect. And this can happen once every 12 seconds. So there's a 1 second gap between when it does go away and come back again. And, of course, the wind-up, so you have to consider that too. But the bleed damage and area of effect also, like I said, does count as damage over time, and it will also make a Zerblight explode. So that is, again, a very helpful choice. You can utilize this as much as you want in any content, and it won't cost you any vet experience. You can get this on normal, you can get this on normal. These are actually flat out, so that you can't get any better in vet. Aegis Caller doesn't get better in vet, neither does Azure Blight, and neither does this apart from recovery. Now overall, Reliquin, yes, of course, on single target was a bit higher. It was about 4 or 5k higher overall. But Aegis, of course, is more area of effect. So in a big cluster of stuff, it's really nasty. And it's really easy to apply as well. This one takes a lot of practice. This one, you just have to light attack or heavy attack and get a crit. It's really, really simple. Now, of course, you can use Alkosh if you prefer, as long as you've got an abundance of synergies. And that will outperform both of them if you've consistently got somewhere between 3 and 6 synergies going left, right, and center, as long as you're actually taking them and keeping up your rotation. But that depends heavily on your group. So for now, Reliquin on the 5-piece or Aegis Caller alongside Azure Blight, and you are good to go. In fact, Azure and Aegis will just annihilate most things anyway. These, again, can be got on normal. Now, champion points. 72 into Ironclad to reduce the amount of direct damage we take, 64 and 64 for everything else, and of course 19%, so 51 points into damage over time reduction. Remember, we've got passives for that as well, so we don't take hardly any damage from damage over time as it is. If you have to break free, we have the Unchained passive, don't forget, so if you will obviously reduce the cost of your next stam ability by 80%, use something expensive. 19 points in quick recovery, which will also give us the field physician passive. So if we res people, we take 15% less damage, but also we have 5% increased healing received. 44 into warlord to reduce the cost of break free. 75 tenacity, 75 mooncalf, so we have more back from our heavy attacks if you need to, and more stam recovery flat out. 72 into tumbling alongside our medium passive is really nice as well. So we've got less costing dodge rolls, and 4 points into Shadow Ward, just because we've got 4 points left, nowhere to really put them, and we can take advantage of the Treasure Hunter passive. So if you are farming for loot, you can get higher quality loot from chests. Just remember, by the way, if you are farming for gear, make sure you kill all the ads, because every single ad in the game can, if you're lucky, drop gear. Yes, including weapons and jewelry. Nothing in here. 66 in Master Arms, because we do have a lot of direct damage, especially our Blast Bones, our Venom Skull, and our light attacks and bits and pieces like that. And of course, light and heavy attacks do need to boost a little bit, so we'll take this here. They do stack alongside of each other, even though they're both direct. This does actually work out quite nicely. And with 75 points in this tree, remember our sweet spot of 25% and under. Light and heavy attacks are stronger. Our crit chances up. Light and heavy attacks are considered as dual wield if we're on that bar, so they are enhanced. This is actually a really nice passive to have alongside everything else. 56 into Thermitage. We do have a lot of damage over time, so we'll take a 20% bonus there. 61 into Precise Strikes to increase our critical damage. We only need 29 into Piercing, because we do have a penetration bonus on our class, and we also have a penetration bonus on one of our weapons. So this is actually very helpful to go really low on here so we can have more flat. 49 into Mighty to increase all of our disease, poison, and physical damage, including our proc sets. Last Stand, of course, is very important. If we go low health, we can get really fast ulti regen, and we've got the Exploiter passive, so if anyone does knock something off balance, we will do 10% more damage with our skills. Now, rotation. Very simple-ish. Remember I said Blast Bone, light skill, Blast Bone, light skill, Blast Bone? Well, that's very true. So, what you want to do, make sure you got your Beast Trap down. Make sure you got your pet active. These two need to be active all the time. When you've got that active, volley, light attack, poison injection, light attack, soul trap, swap. That's your first start. Now, once you get into the fight, you want to light attack, Blast Bones. As soon as you press that, light attack, Deadly Cloak, light attack, Venom Skull. That's your starting point. Now, your Blast Bones would have exploded by now, so we cast another one, and then we need 2 skill fillers. So here's one. Then, once it's the last one's already exploded, light attack, Siphon, light attack, Skull. Notice that both skulls were the 2 hands throwing it. They're the strong ones. Yes, loads of stuff is exploding. It's amazing. Then when you've got to your last Blast Bone, so we're doing 3 on the front bar, light, blast, light, beast trap, swap bars. Now, let's do that slow-ish, but we'll do it in order. But we'll make it so that these actually are timed. So this will be grayed out. Light Blast Bones, Light Deadly Cloak, Light Skull. Light Blast Bones, Light Siphon, Light Skull. Light Blast Bones, Light Beast Trap, Swap Bars. I'll do that once more. Light Blast, Light Deadly, Light Skull. Light Blast, Light Siphon, Light Skull, Light Blast, Light Beast Trap, Swap. So, to slow that down again, 1 Blast Bones, Deadly, Skull. 1 Blast Bones, Siphon, Skull. 1 Blast Bones, Beast Trap, Swap. That, if timed perfectly, will never fail. When you're on your back bar, after your starting rotation, all you need to do every single time is this. Volley, Light Attack Poison, Light Attack Pet, Light Attack Soul Trap, Swap Bars. Repeat the front bar, go back, do it again. If your ultimate is ready, fire it before Soul Trap. The reason for that is if you fire this and try and swap bars, it sometimes gets stuck. So you don't want to get caught on that. It doesn't have a cast time as such, so it's not like the Nightblade ulti or Dawnbreaker, but it can get stuck. So I usually cast this first, then Light Attack, Soul Trap, and swap bars. But if you're not lagging, you don't have any ping issues, then of course you can put it on the last and swap very quickly to the front. Don't forget, of course, you can scoop up the bodies, but we'll show you one more time what this looks like. So you got to have your pet active anyway. Trap. Volley, Light, Poison, Light, Soul Trap, Swap. Blast, Deadly, Skull. Blast, Siphon, Skull. Blast, Beast Trap, Swap. Volley, Light, Poison, Light, Pet, Light, Trap, Swap. Blast, Deadly, Skull. Blast. You get the idea. Now, this is a very static rotation in that it is just your front bar stuff, your back bar stuff, your front bar stuff, your back bar stuff. It doesn't change ever. You can scoop up dead bodies if you want, but that's it. There's none of this 4-line, 6-line, 12-line crap where you basically have more complicated combos than you've ever seen in any fighting game in your life. It's just front bar stuff, back bar stuff. Keep your practice up. Now, here's a screenshot of what you can expect from a single target and AoE build combined. Remember, this is not designed to be the highest single target smasher in the game. It's designed to be a combination of the two. And it has survival and sustain. So you can get this out of it if you are practicing your rotation. You can get a little higher. You can sometimes push to about 85, sometimes 86. If you add Tremor Scale and take some champion points out of your penetration, in fact, all of them, yes, of course, you can push to 90 as well. And even higher if you've got Major Slayer and other buffs that aren't present on the dummy, unless somebody else brings it. But if you can crack anywhere even close to this, or even 10 to 15k less than this, you're not going to struggle in any content, as long as you're not dead. Now, yes, there's been complaints in the past from people that don't even like the channel, saying, where's the dummy pass? The dummy's been done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. Do you really need to see it all? The argument for that, apparently, is very intelligent. Apparently, it's because I need to prove that I can do the rotation. Okay? So, this is a rotation. We'll make sure our buffs are up. Here we go. I'm proving myself. Are we there yet? Do I need to do anything else? Do you like me now? You don't need to go any further than that. You don't need to see me smack that thing for fucking 3 minutes. It's a waste of time. The video is long enough as it is. Hopefully, there's enough information in there to help you. However, balls to it. Here's a sped up version. Now we're going to get into the fabulous factor. We are going into fashion. So, let's see what we are wearing. We are wearing a light Akaviri hat. Scale Caller Curious, so heavy Scale Caller. Dragon Guard Pauldron, so heavy Dragon Guard on the shoulders. Light Apostle on the hands. Light Sacy on the belt. Meridian Greaves, so heavy Meridian on the legs. Medium Apostle, actually. Ooh, nearly got that wrong. And the daggers are both, there's actually an axe and a dagger, but they're looking like daggers. The daggers are both buoyant armature. Now that is quite expensive as far as motifs are concerned, so that might take you a while to get those, unless of course you're farming for it. And the same on the back bar as well. The bow is also buoyant armature. So the colors we're using are, of course, two very shiny ones. You might want to substitute these for something else because they are quite difficult to get. So you might want to use Cold Harbor Ash or perhaps Stalmore Black instead of Legate's Black if you don't have it. But the blacks being used are all Legate Black, as you can see here. And the red we're using is actually the Hollow Fang color. This is unlocked via the Scale Breaker Delver achievement. Daedric Red isn't too bad. That's another option if you prefer, but those are the two that we're actually using. So, hopefully that helped. Hopefully that wasn't too boring. Hopefully you now have a better understanding of how to approach this particular build. It is designed, again, for single target and AoE combined, considering all content, not just bosses. So, hopefully you can adapt to those situations and pay very close attention to dead bodies and scoop them all up. So, first of all, thank you all very much for watching. I hugely appreciate support. If you are not subscribing already, please do hit that button. It is free. And don't forget the notification bell so you know when I'm uploading new videos. Also, if you'd like to support outside the channel, there are some links in the description for Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, the website xynodegaming.com, where all the written guides are, including this one. And don't forget, I live stream on Twitch every day except Wednesdays from 10 PM UK time onwards, unless, of course, I say otherwise on Twitter. Maybe something came up. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.